Hello and welcome to Unlocked, brought to you on E360 TV. This is Madelyn Blair, the host of Unlocked, a show that's all about opening possibilities so that your life can be easier. You know, a lot of people have asked me why I do this show. I mean, I do a lot of things and they say, why are you bothering with this? And I had to think about that. And I decided it's important that I say why. You see, I know how difficult it is to pursue a career. And for women, it's often even harder. I've been a division chief at the World Bank, and I've been running my own company for the last 30-some years. So I've seen what it's like to really get actually having to do impossible things when even as you're doing them, things are changing. I understand what it means to be the only woman at the table. I understand what it means to know that you can do so much more. And what I want to do is share with you the fact that I was able to get over the barriers with high energy and to be able to remain full of hope. I want to share that with you. I want to help you to learn how to open the possibilities so that you can do that too. Well, thank you for joining me. And today, I'm very excited because I have a very special guest on. She and I met 15 years ago in Copenhagen. I was there at a conference talking about the use of storytelling in organizations. And in the audience, there was a young woman who was just full of energy. But the thing that really caught my eye was that she was full of joy. Well, needless to say, we got together. We became friends. We spent a half a day in walking around Copenhagen. It was lovely. But tonight, or I should say today, because you know there are people watching this that it's not at night for them. So today, I'll say, in this show, she's going to join me and she's going to talk about her work and its impact. But I want to first tell you a bit about Pernille Stockfleth. She's a storyteller. She's a storytelling facilitator and a team builder in corporate and organizational meetings. She works with young people as a teacher of drama, empowerment, presentation techniques, and personal growth. She has been a singer, a composer, and an actor. Today, she is the founding owner of Living Stories in Copenhagen. And I'm going to practice my Danish and say that what it's really called, and I know it's not going to be right, but I'm going to try, Pernille, to say this. See, she's laughing already. 11 fortellinger. Did I really massacre it?
It was actually the best I've heard so far. I must say, perfect Danish is the most difficult language to learn. So yeah, beautiful.
Oh, good. Well, so how do you really say it?
Levende fortællinger.
Ah, but of course, living stories.
Yeah.
Well, as a storyteller, you can see already that Pernille is full of energy. She's going to engage us. I know she is. And at the same time, she's going to be very, very incisive. I know that. I know that from talking to her. So we're going to be talking about the impact of her work and mostly from the eyes of the storyteller. So Pernille, welcome to Unlocked.
Thank you so much, Madelyn. I've been looking so much forward to this. I love your work. I love the meaning of your work and the impact that your work does. I'm very inspired. So I'm so glad to be in your show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, I think that I've given just a tiny little description of you. Would you expand a little bit more and tell people how you ended up doing what you do today?
Yeah. I can tell you the story of me finding out that I was a thinking human being. That I think I'll start there. because I was about 4 or 5 years old, and I walked around in my garden here in Denmark, not my garden, but my parents' garden. And I walked around there. It was an autumn day, grey, and with falling leaves, and I was walking there by myself, pondering and wondering how it would be like to think, because I've heard people talking about thinking, and I've found that it was very interesting, and I wanted to be able to think. And as I was thinking this, I realized that I was thinking. And the moment I realized that I was thinking, a whole new universe opened to me, the universe of the inner of my skull, my brain. And I've decided that I wanted to spend the rest of my life not just thinking, but be happy about me being able to think. So that's a defining story of my personal life. And I ended up doing storytelling both in organizations and as art, because I needed to speak. I needed to have a voice, and I have had this pressure all my life. I know a lot of people know this force within oneself, that you need to express yourself. And I found different ways of putting that energy, into different kinds of work, singing, composing music, and drama and stuff like that. And storytelling is a beautiful assembly of all those different things. And so that's why I ended up founding my own company, and I've been laughing ever since.
Well, your story of discovering that you are a thinking entity, I found that to be absolutely fascinating, because there are stages that a child goes through. Like in the 2-year-old, as a 2-year-old, they suddenly discover that they're independent from their mother, because up until then they thought they and their mother were the same thing. Yeah. And that must be monumental when a child suddenly discovers that. But you describe another, which is I've never heard explained so well, and yet all of us at some point discover that we have that capacity to explore the universe within ourselves. Oh, thank you for that story. Wow.
Yeah, I think that I do like to reflect, and that has been with me all the time. And I've been noticing all your thoughts and work about resilience, and that has been a theme of my line of thinking: how to overcome and how to be stronger mentally, and how to move forward, and building resilience to be a friend in your life.
Wow, good. Well, I wonder if you also would talk a little bit about Living Stories, the company, and what is it that you do? Tell me, just give us some examples.
Yeah, I use storytelling in organizational settings. I've been in the recent years, I've been telling stories for leaders, actually, where if they have a seminar, CEOs and stuff, people like that, they have a seminar and they're talking about leadership or management, and they're talking about the differences and how to be a good CEO and be an inspiration for the colleagues and workers in their businesses. I show up at nighttime. I've been hired to do this, so I show up at nighttime, not for them to have a seminar in the evening, but to just sit down and have a good story and listen. And of course, we pick together, me and the client pick the stories for that evening, so that it will reflect the thoughts that they have been talking about. And I'm mostly talking about Shackleton, the explorer, and a Danish explorer as well, Knud Rasmussen, because their leadership was amazing. They were modern leaders, but I tell it in the form of story, and it inspires them to talk in metaphors the next day. So the next day, when they continue their seminar, they will, or conference, or whatever they are doing, they will talk and do references back to the that situation that she was talking about yesterday. So for them, it's just a cultural event, but it's not. It's very strictly planned to inspire and to get them to move on.
Oh,
That's
that's
just an example.
I like that a lot. And so often when I'm brought in to work with companies, I'm in there during the day, and of course what I try to do is give them some time off at night. And yet I love the idea of you coming in to tell a story, because that is definitely giving them a relaxation, and they're not have to focus on their business at that time. And yet you're right, the story brings all kinds of insights. Why do you think story is so powerful this way?
I think I have actually thought a lot about this, because I think the power of story, and that was also what we were actually all already discussing this 15 years ago, and that was new for me then. I know that you were already thinking about this and developing all kinds of strategies and stuff, but for me it was really new, and I've been thinking a lot about it. And I think that storytelling is a powerful tool, because you talk not so much to the brain, you talk more to the heart, but still you have to use your brain when you're listening to a story. And the heart and brain come together makes a bigger soul, because when combining these things, you have a whole new experience, I think, listening, because it's actually, you're not relaxed when you're listening to a story, because your brain is working really hard. It's making all the pictures. It's making an internal movie inside of you, hopefully, if the storyteller is good. And all these paintings and pictures and things work, so you are really alert when you're listening, even though you might sit relaxed and stuff. You're working, because we're not showing you the pictures. You have to do them yourself.
Yeah.
And I've been telling stories about Second World War, where there was a female heroine here in Denmark, a really, really wonderful woman that was in the Danish resistance, and she was actually deported to a German concentration camp, Ravensbrück, and on the brim of her existence, she was rescued with a big action made from the Danish and Swedish and Norwegian Red Cross, and brought home to Denmark, and she survived it. And this story is really a strong, hectic, and emotional story. And I've been telling that stories in settings where historians that have been working with the Second World War as topic of their professional life, and they have, even though that, they have been sitting crying. And after the show, they said to me, "How come that you could make me cry? I know everything about this topic, and still you make me cry." And it's not me, but it's the storytelling that does it. It's not me.
I never thought about the fact that our brains are actually working really hard. But you're absolutely right, because we are imagining. It's much more work than watching television, where everything is there. That's beautiful. And And the fact that I love your imagery of the brain and the heart working together. I got the feeling of, it's sort of like having a right hand and a left hand. You can do so much more when you have both hands working.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So now you've talked about using storytelling in business to help them I want to say refresh, because they are being refreshed at night.
Yeah.
But at the same time they learn something new for the next day. What are some other things, other places in which you use story? You've said about the historians, but what was the purpose there?
The purpose there was actually that I was engaged to tell stories in a museum, the Danish National Museum, because they had an exhibition there where this action to rescue a lot of prisoners from the concentration camps. They made a big exhibition there, and they wanted me to tell stories in that exhibition. So that was why I was there. So.
Interesting. What I'm hearing, though, from what you said about their reactions was, in a way, you brought life to the museum. In other words, up until then, it was just things and events and facts, but you brought life to it.
And I think that is what storytelling does. I work pretty much actually in different museum settings. As a storyteller or cultural bearer or something like that. And I do that because I want to make history also come alive and be something that people can feel, can sense, can relate to in another matter than just reading a book or looking at things, exhibited things. Oh, this is a spoon. Well, yeah. But the story behind the finding of the spoon can actually make a child want to be a historian or an archaeologist or something like that. Because if you tell the story behind it, then you engage people in a totally different level. And I'm doing a lot of work like that.
I keep thinking about going to museums, and they always have this little, like a little plaque next to it, and they tell you about the thing, and then you have some language. And I just wonder, I sometimes try to read them, but I get bored after a while. But if there was a story there, it might be quite different. I might really seek them out.
Yeah.
Perhaps there's a museum that does that. I'll have to put out my feelers and see.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you're familiar with the work of Karen Workman in Brazil. She has a museum called the Museu da Pessoa now I know how to say that one.
Very beautiful. I don't know how to say that.
she's in Sao Paulo, and her museum is all stories. She goes out and collects the stories of the people, whether they are presidents, CEOs, or whether they're indigenous people in the jungle. She's collected tens of thousands of stories.
Cool.
And to her, that's the living, that's their country. It's these living stories.
Oh, yeah. They have a museum in Sweden. We don't have a museum like that in Denmark, but in Sweden they have a museum in a small town called Ljungby, where they have the story museum, Sorgobygden, the story village. And they are also collecting and telling stories both for children and grown up, keeping the Nordic traditions of fairy tales and stuff like that vibrant and serving it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I never, when you said fairy tales, I thought, wow, of course we get fairy tales from the Nordics. Santa Claus is one that comes out of the Nordic fairy tales, from what I understand.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the Nordic country, we're arguing very hard on where he actually lives, because some people say he's living in Greenland, and somebody is telling he's living in Finland, and we can't agree on that. Maybe he has a place everywhere, up north.
Well, we've been talking about story and how incredibly powerful it is, and it truly is. When you said it, you connect the heart and the mind. What I often say to people is a story comes in the back door of your brain. It removes you get so enraptured with the story that all your filters drop, and so it comes in. It really comes in. That to me is part of the power of story as well. Are there benefits? Now we've talked about some, but what do you see as the benefit of a storytelling?
I think that for me, as a storyteller, I've been thinking a lot about why I do want to tell stories. And why is it meaningful to me to tell stories, both things that I make up, or if I pick up someone else's story. And I think that for every human being, there is this longing for community. Inside of each and every one of us, I think there is this longing for recognition, or just, oh, I know of that feeling. And sometimes we can be caught up in our own minds. Am I the only one that thinks like this or feels like this? And when I tell stories, when we are in a storytelling setting, be that in businesses or on stage or anything, there has to be a little light so I can see what's going on inside in the audience. I have to see their faces because I can hear them breathing and I can see them. And when I tell a story, I reach out and somebody grabs my hand, and I'm not alone. And neither is the person in the audience. The audience may say, oh, yes, I know that feeling.
Yeah.
I'm not alone. We are in this life together. And our feelings are not strange to anybody else. We're one. I think that's a really, really important thing of telling a story and listening to a story.
Yeah. Oftentimes when I'm working with teams, I will open the session with them telling stories to each other, because you're right. As they tell something from themselves, and I always say, as long as it's a personal story, you are essentially saying, this is who I am. You're opening yourself up to them. And in that process, I have watched teams just come together like that. And nothing stopped them after that, because they suddenly knew, this person is like me. This person is like me. We have this common place. Yeah. Yeah. So definitely belonging, building community. Excellent uses.
Yeah. And I think, I've been talking to CEOs when I say, I'm bored. I have 200 people below me and I'm bored. I don't want to. And I say, go listen to the worker's story.
Yeah.
The guy standing by that machine, he might be really interested in birds in his spare time, or he might have been going somewhere interesting. You never know. If you want to make your job interesting, ask for stories.
That is brilliant advice on so many levels, Pernille, because when you work with leaders, oftentimes they make the assumption that they know everything that is necessary for them to do their jobs. And yet you're right. Because they don't do the work, they can't know that same feeling at that end. And just going to ask for the stories gives them a much broader understanding of what's happening in their company. I think it will even tell them why their culture is acting a particular way. You know, we often say, oh, well, we have to fix the culture. Well, you better first get a sense of it. Yeah,
absolutely. You know, having people to tell stories to each other also shows the company's culture. I've done a few together with some other consultants. We did an exercise called "Tell the best story of your time in the company." Just the best, just a snippet, you know,
yeah.
2 minutes. And this was an international company that was very eager to be effective and stuff like that. And they had really good employees that were very brainy. That it was, you know, it was a medical company. I won't say anything more about it, but that was what it was. And after this exercise where people in groups had to tell stories, the best story, what the best experience that they had with the company, and they were 90 people. And then at the final end of that, we gathered all the groups together and said, all the stories you've heard, let's hear 5 or 6 or 7, and it's the conclusion on this exercise was for this company that they had the most brilliant, caring culture. And this was news, because it wasn't something that they had been working on or strategizing or, you know, mission, vision, blah, 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 all that. It was just something that had come into their DNA, that everybody was really warm welcome. Many of the stories was just about that. And of course they had this training program, but without the warmth of the people, it's worth nothing. And people had difficult times where they would have to, you know, death in family, stuff like that. And the stories were just, that came up was all the care. And it was so beautiful, because the CEOs of that, they was just, wow, how beautiful. They didn't know it.
They didn't know it.
No.
Wow. Yeah. That's, in a way, it's confirmation that people have chosen to be in the medical arena. Why would you choose that? Or if you didn't care for other people. And you said that they were very intellectual as well. And so in a way that could mask their caring, simply because they felt they needed to project intellectualism, when in fact what their real heart was saying was that they cared. That's a great story.
But Madelyn, I would like to ask you a question, because
Please.
I'm thinking about this. I would like to ask you, why do you do what you do?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I guess I'll answer it this way. I discovered story, I guess it was 20 some years ago, when a friend of mine said, there's this conference going on in this town, and you should be there. I said, why? Well, because you think, well, you should be there. So I went and I got introduced to story. And I was fascinated, because I immediately could see that there was a different level of communication going on when you move into story. And I have to say that that combined with my understanding of who I am, because you talked about caring, and this is one of my stories which I don't always share, but I'll share it because you asked. I'm a gardener. I love flowers and plants and trees. I mean, I really love gardening. And one day I'm out and I'm weeding. Now, that's probably, of all the tasks that a gardener has to do, that's the one that's the most loathsome, because you have to do it again and again and again. But I stood back and I said, I look and these plants are really doing well. They're blooming. It's lovely. And as I said that, I thought, You know, if for eternity all I did was take care of a garden, I would be content. And like you, when you're describing as a 5-year-old, to me, it was like that. Oh my goodness. Madelyn, you are a gardener. You may not always be in a flowers garden, but you are about gardening people. And when I had that realization, I shifted my focus so that everything that I do is always geared to helping people be who they are. You know, if you're a tomato plant, I want a red tomato from you. I don't care about a yellow squash. I want a red tomato from you. So when I discovered story and its power and its ability to influence and build people up, because you can use it in so many ways to build things up, not destroy things. I said, that's a perfect vehicle. And that's one of the reasons why it's one of the practices in my book. Write a story every day. Because when you look at a story, especially if it's your own story, you go, wow, that's something that formed me. Now, let me understand that in relationship to who I am today. So, and I'll tell you, highly resilient people always know who they are.
Yeah.
They just do. So if you can help people know who they are, and story does it. So that's what, thank you for asking that question.
That's what a wonderful answer. I really love that answer. And I think that, you know, we all have to, I think, no, not have to, but we have to seek out why or how we came about being who we are to in order to you know, bloom and be happy and be fulfilled. I think knowing oneself is so very important. Yeah.
Well, you know, about this time we need to take a quick break. But before we take that break, Pernille, I wonder if when we come back, you'd be willing to tell a little story.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
All right. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. I just have to, there it is. And we're back. This is Unlocked. I'm your host, Madelyn Blair, and tonight, or today, we are talking with Pernille Stockfleth. She's from Copenhagen, and she's been talking about storytelling and how she does it from her perspective. And she promised that she would tell a story.
Yes, and I will tell you a story about me having a search for meaning. And also, I was in a period of my life where I was thinking a lot about why people became what they became. And one night I was telling story I was telling stories at an observatory, and it was lying on the top of a hill. And we don't have that many hills in Denmark, so it's a sensation when we do have a hill. And you have to imagine a summer's night in the northern part of the world, where the nights aren't that dark. They're actually a bit light. They're dark blue nights. And this was a starry night, a beautiful starry night. And people were coming to the observatory during the nighttime to listen to stories and to look in the big,
Telescope?
telescopes, yeah, to look at the stars and the moon and everything. And I told my stories, and I walked around in the darkness, and I could hear more than see all the people, the families that were resting for the night or looking at the telescopes, and I could hear even cows mooing, on a field nearby. And then I went to talk to an astronomer, which was managing one of the telescopes. And I said to him, I wonder why, do you know why you became an astronomer? And he said, no, I actually don't know. But now you're asking, I remember something. I was told throughout my childhood that my first word wasn't mom or dad. It was moon. And when he said that, this was an elderly man, he smiled with a smile that gave meaning to all my search for why people do pursue the things that they do. In his case, it was obvious. And
Wow.
that's just a little story.
A little story. Oh my, a little story with a big impact. Moon. I could just imagine that parents saying, he's saying moon. Why doesn't he say mom or dad?
Yeah. And that is actually a beautiful thing, because then they remember and they tell him when he's coming of age. And so that will confirm his own feelings about himself. So I thought that was good.
Yes.
The frustration from the parents gave him made his story be remembered.
That's right. That's right. It also says to me that it's important for parents to be observing their children, but to turn them into stories so that the child can re-experience those moments when their memory doesn't bring it up to them because they were so little, but it helps them understand something about themselves. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to challenge myself to think of stories that I can tell my daughter. Now, of course, she's grown now, and I have a grandson, but I'm going to think about that. And in fact, the first one that comes to mind, it was a time she stole a popsicle out of the freezer, and she ran outside to eat it, and and I went outside for some reason to call her. And she's standing there next to a tree, and her hand is behind the tree where she's hiding. And so I will tell her that story. And you see, to me, that was how clever of her that she thought to do that.
Yeah.
Goodness, you bring up so many things, Pernille. I want to shift gears a little bit because last week I spoke with Sean Callahan. His company is called Anecdote, and they are out of Melbourne, Australia. And he was talking about how he brought his company through the pandemic. And as he described it, I realized that the experience of the pandemic in Australia was different than it is in the United States. So I'm curious if you could share a little bit about the pandemic in Denmark.
Yeah. Of course, the pandemic also struck here in Denmark, and we had a lot of sick people. And of course, as a result of that, we had to have a lockdown as any other country in the world. And for me as a performer and team builder, and always being around a lot of people, that was a catastrophe, because all my funding went, because all my shows were canceled. Everything I did was canceled. But then the Danish state, they offered a compensation for people, small businesses who had been caught in this pandemic, and you could apply for it if your paying was going down with more than 30%. And that was my company in a nutshell. And so I applied, and I got through the pandemic with money from the state, not as a loan, but as a compensation for me personally and for my business. And being an artist and a teacher is a very insecure business. Everybody knows that. We never know what tomorrow brings. And it's difficult to protect oneself for these strange changes. And I felt so grateful towards the Danish state that they had this idea of compensating people, and for me, being acknowledged by the state that I do a work, and my work is important. So of course they wanted to support me. For me, that was really, really touching, and it brought me through the pandemic with a sense of gratitude and grace and thankfulness towards this possibility, because I didn't go out of business or have a catastrophe economically, and thank God I was well, and I'm vaccinated, and everything is okay, and I think it was defining for me to get this help from the state, because it meant a difference for me. It really did.
Well, it was like an affirmation of what you do.
Absolutely, yeah, because it's hard to secure yourself. I don't get a pension from a company or something like that. I have to take care of myself, as every small business has, and nobody will come to my rescue if I'm sick or something. I just have to swallow some pills and get out there and do my show. So it was a recognition and an affirmation. Yes, you are doing work. We see you, and we want you to continue that. So we want you to survive, and that was something that I was so grateful for.
Oh, marvelous, marvelous. One of the things that I've observed here is that attention is often placed on the things that we lost. And yes, of course, we lost friends, we lost family members, but what I'm hearing is more the small things, like I couldn't go to have breakfast with my buddies every week, and I missed that. Or I couldn't go to a graduation because we didn't have graduation, and you only get to graduate once. Those kinds of things that I consider ordinary parts of life that we were denied. And I think that at the moment, we may not put our finger on it, but it's a form of grief. Do you see that at all in Denmark?
Absolutely, yes. A fear, a grief of missing out special dates, special events, special occasions that will, as you say, only occur once in a lifetime. And people are postponing weddings and stuff in order to be together, and there is a sense of grief, Absolutely, yes.
Now, do you see story helping in that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
How, tell me a little bit more about how.
Yeah. I think that stories can help heal grief. I think that stories can help us to move forward. Also, again, if somebody is sitting out there somewhere in the world thinking, I was the only one that missed my own graduation, and I feel alone in that. And if that person share their story, then they will see hands come up and say, excuse me, that was me as well.
Mhm.
And if we can share those story, what did you miss? What did you miss out on? What is the feeling that you sit with in your soul after this?
Mm.
Then I think we can really, find out that I am not the only one that was deprived of something.
Mhm.
We were all deprived of something. And the best way to move on is to talk it through and say, yes, that was some of the things that I'm having in my life, and we are all sharing it.
You know, it says to me that we really should be telling stories to one another about something that we remember from the pandemic. It could be something
Absolutely.
good, something bad, but something that we remember, just to allow our minds to just sort of process this whole experience. It's been a traumatic experience for us.
And it has, I think so too, to all of the world, every part of the world. That's my guess. I haven't been everywhere. But I think that there has to be a healing process. And in that, as you say, story is really a way of healing.
Yeah.
And
Now,
yeah.
Can anybody tell a story? How do you help people tell a story? I know you work with Dialugal.
Yeah, I do help. I do teach storytelling, and I do teach story. And I think if we start somewhere, if you are working in a working place every day and you have colleagues, there's also always a colleague of yours that on Monday you're eager to hear what happened during the weekend. Not because they were saying you were living a strange life, but just because they're good at telling you about it.
Mhm.
That's the storyteller.
Yeah.
Everybody can become one. Some has to practice more than others. And among all small or bigger tribes, or groups of people, there's a storyteller. There's somebody who is telling stories.
How do you help people find their stories? I know, for example, one of the things that you brought to one of the conferences we had in Washington was something called Dialugal Cards.
Yeah.
And to me, they were a wonderful way to help people find stories. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, because it can, if somebody's just asking you, tell a story, and you're not a storyteller, you'll be flabbergasted. I don't know what kind of story. So Dialugal is a set of cards, picture cards, photos actually, and they are really, really picked out with an intention. It's not just random photos. It's 56 cards with photos on them that can sparkle a passion for saying something, and asking the right questions around it. We have been talking about appreciative inquiry. If you speak, tell the story of an event that was really defining in a good way for you, and you spread out the pictures. And then we say, you have to talk from this picture. You choose a picture.
What's an example of one of the pictures?
It could be a very, very happy child.
Okay.
Singing. being really excited. Or it could be a man struggling to get to the top of a mountain.
Yeah.
Snow. It could be people sitting around talking. It could be an island in a sea where you just can see a little small island and there's water all around it. So many of the pictures are also metaphoric in a way, but you can use them just one-on-one, or you can take them for the metaphor and bring that ahead. And then you pick a picture and then you say, I would like to tell the story of this, how this picture has brought me to remember this story, because I felt like that. I felt like an island. Yeah. I was all alone, blah, 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 blah. And then they talk. And that's a really good way to start off, because a picture that's the motto of Dialugal Cards. A picture can get you to say more than 1,000 words. And I think that's really important. And of course, the line of questioning is also important. Yeah. Because if you just spread out the pictures and say, tell a story, people would say, oh, about what? But if you frame the question, and that's the really interesting thing about teaching story, is that you have to think about what stories would you like to hear? And, if you say, tell a story that formed you as a person, find a picture that sparks a memory of something important in your life, and tell the story from that picture. Then you are starting. Then you are doing the stories.
I think that would be a powerful way for parents to help their children share about their lives, because our children are so smart. They really are. But they like even us, you need something to just sort of bring a focus, and a picture, it gives you a focus, and then it expands as you relate it to who you are. I think would be a brilliant way to help parents and children understand one another better.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I know that these pictures have been been used in groups where around sorrow therapy, and also with autism and other of the spectrum, because people can be very introverted and not have so many words. But if you have a picture, then you release something within you. And I've been teaching children also to tell stories from pictures, and it works perfectly. Really does.
Oh, that's actually very exciting. Because I remember those cards when you brought them. And in fact, I still have some of them because they are so beautiful.
That's good.
and the one that I remember is of a rusty faucet dripping water. Now, don't ask me why I remember that one, but that's the one I remember. Oh, goodness. Well, Pernille, this has been so much fun talking with you about story. Some people might think, what does this have to do with resilience? But of course, in my practices, storytelling is a part of it, because you've got to know who you are. But talking with you has just been so much fun. I just really appreciate that you took the time, because for you, this is midnight. Now I'm almost 1 o'clock in the morning, and I so appreciate that. Are there some closing comments you want to make, and how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, I would like to say that a lot of Indigenous people sit in council, and when they talk together, they talk in the form of story. So this is a basic for people to talk in story, and to learn more about oneself, and to learn more about the other ones that you're spending time with is really important. And the use of story is perhaps the most powerful tool to get closer to one another, and we have to get closer in humanity in order to help our planet and help ourselves and everything, and also to develop empathy and and the feeling of community. And resilience is I think a powerful tool, and knowing oneself, that also comes from the stories that you tell yourself and you tell others about yourself. So I think story as an art, as a culture, as community making, or in all different kinds of specters of life, is really, really important. So yeah, and if you want to get in contact, you can see my name and find me on Facebook, and there you can find my email address, because I think it's better in writing than I say it. I can say my email is Pernille blah blah blah, but still levende fortællinger, and nobody would know what it was. So find me. I'm under my own name on Facebook, Pernille Stockfleth, and there you can see all about me.
Great. Pernille, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I'm thanking you, Madelyn. Thank you for having me here. It has been so exciting. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well, what a conversation, especially around a topic that is so powerful. You know, leaders use stories to create and embellish visions so that they can inspire people. If you ever question that, just go to YouTube and look up Steve Jobs and watch as he introduces the iPhone. I will tell you, the story and the vision is so clear. You'll want to go out and buy another iPhone, even if you already have one, because he used it so well. Parents, we talked about parents with Pernille and how we can use stories to teach the child about themselves. I love to use it to talk about members of my family so that children can learn other members of the family that they may not see all the time, and yet they are part of who they are. I think children can use stories to share themselves. Even if it's a made-up story, it doesn't matter. They're still sharing something of themselves. And of course, teachers use it all the time. In a university, we call them case studies, but it's a story of something that's real. So it's an everyday activity. And I'm hoping that you'll take it as an everyday activity to write down a story and discover more about who you are. Well, thank you for watching Unlocked. Our hashtag is opening possibilities. And if you have a topic that you would love to see covered, please email me. You can see my email on the screen. Just email me and I will work to put it in to the show. I've had suggestions from other people, and we've always been able to find someone to come and talk about that particular issue. So do send those to me. Next week, we're going to be talking with Chris O'Rourke. He's a chief operating officer, and he runs the Chief Operating Officers Business Forum for New York City and Washington, D.C. A wonderful man. Please join us. So this is Madelyn Blair saying thank you very much for being with me today, and wishing you infinite possibilities as you unlock your resilience.